AllStar Weekend. What'd you make of it?
Well, I think it couldn't have gone better. I think that I love how people nitpick, Nick. They say, well, they could have done this better. They could have done that better. For example, I coached in a Pride game on Saturday morning. It was at 9 o'clock in the morning. There was no one there. And people say, oh, they could have showcased it, done it better. But we didn't want it to go head to head with the women's game. Gary Bettman came to the game, visited with the players, didn't just show up and hand out a check. Gave a check for $25,000 to the Toronto Gay Hockey Association. They did everything they could to make it perfect. So I think it was great. I thought the skills were great, except for Cooch. I thought Cooch could have done better. I thought the game was great. Took it seriously. I liked the celebrities. The celebrities were all active participants. Michael Bublé is a good friend of mine, so that was good. But no, I thought it was great. I enjoyed it. And I don't usually like All-Star. I think All-Star is a necessary evil. I know we need to do it for sponsors and media coverage, and it's a necessary evil for me, but I thought this one was exceptional.
For sure. Burke, you weren't the friend that gave Bublé those microdose of mushrooms, were you?
What are mushrooms?
Portobello. Moving on to the Leafs there, Burke. Lots going on. From your perspective, last time we talked to you, we were talking about that Nylander contract. You said you wouldn't give him over 11. He got 11.5. Fair enough. Or right around the same ballpark, but he's kind of fallen off since the day he signed that thing. And I think if you could give a knock on William Nylander, it's, effort level at certain times when his motivation might be low. And, some people could point the finger since he signed that contract. He has not been the same guy.
Well, I think my history with players has been, I think there's a fall off on when a lot of guys sign, Jay. And it's not because they say, okay, I got the money, I don't need to work hard. It's not a deliberate fall off. You're talking life-changing money. His family is set for life now. They were anyway, but they're set for life now. And I think there's a natural fall off. I've seen it happen with players, even really intense players, guys that care and are going to give you everything they can. But all of a sudden their life has changed. All that pressure, stay healthy, do things right, all that's all gone. And I think a lot of teams or a lot of players historically have taken a step back right after they get a new deal. And I've called players in. I said to them, look, you got 100 points last year. You don't need to get 110 points. You don't need to get 120 points. We signed you, get 100. Just do what you did for last year. That'll be enough. It's not. They still feel the pressure. I've got to get better. And so sometimes it takes some time for it to work out. I'm not willing to say to you guys that this is a permanent fall off because William Nylander doesn't care. It's way too early for that.
Yep. Definitely. And we are approaching the March 8th trade deadline. Your Leafs related trade deadline wish list. What would that entail? What would that include?
Well, I think it's a short list because of the cap. And I support, let's go back. When Nylander signed with Toronto initially, I think a lot of people now have been critical and said, the big four, it's too much money. I said it at the time. I said it in real time on Sportsnet. I said it's a mistake. That being said, last year and this year, William Nylander has been exceptional. He's been exceptional. And I don't think they had any choice but to sign him, even though it perpetuated the big four, even though it tied their hands with other stuff. So I don't know what else they do. They've got to figure out the goalie. I thought the rebound control the night before last was horrible. And I don't know why none of the announcers picked up on it. Or maybe they did and I didn't hear it. But I thought every shot there was a big rebound, every single one. I get some of them are hard shots. And the goalie's got to focus on stopping that puck no matter what. If there's a rebound, there's a rebound. It's someone else's job. I get that. But there can't be a juicy rebound on every shot. And I thought there were rebounds on every shot. So I think some of the loss was self-inflicted. I didn't like I love Morgan Riley, but his play on the third goal obviously was sleepy a little bit. But I think you gotta excuse Morgan Riley for making one mistake the way he's been playing. So to me, I would say they need to upgrade their defense.
Yeah, so we've been talking about that ourselves as well. Talking about UC Soros potentially being available. Do you put a goaltender in there? Samsonov's come back and been pretty good last game. Joseph Wall, everything you've asked of that young kid to come in tough situations, he's came and performed for you. Would you? I mean, like you say, the cap. There's limited movement you can make, limited prospects and picks. You'd focus more on the defense than the goaltender situation. I'm getting.
I don't think you can solve the goaltender problem. I think the best you can do is get a Band-Aid that maybe makes you better, maybe doesn't. Samsonov has certainly been better the last 10 games or so, or 8 games. Certainly been better. Maybe you take your chances on him. Maybe you've got limited assets to spend. You got limited assets to expend to get assets back. You don't have any draft picks. You strip the system. And again, trying to win, I'm not being critical. We were short of draft picks in Pittsburgh, but we got 2 rings before we got short of draft picks. So guess what? We were short of draft picks. Tampa's short of draft picks. Guess what? They got 2 rings. So sometimes it makes sense. You know my rant about the trade deadline and how there's only one cup. I checked with the league again today. They're only awarding 1 Stanley Cup. That's right. And therefore, you're going to see 14, 15, 16 teams make major moves, and only one of them's going to have a parade. I checked. It's only one. So you're going to see guys blow their brains out like every bloody year for no reason at all. So you start with limited assets to spend to get players, limited cap space. You're not going to be able to do very much in my mind, unless you can make a hockey deal or two and not worry about rentals.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be difficult for a Maple Leafs team, as you just referenced, the salary cap. But, Berkey, there is this belief that the higher-ups, maybe in Toronto, don't feel this team is capable of winning the Cup this year. Would you sell? Would you buy? Would you hold? Is it a tough sell to ownership, by the way? I mean, you've been in this position to say, hey, like, we're a perennial contender. We think we're a perennial contender, but this might not be our year.
Well, I never got the team in that position, to be honest with you, Nick. I'm very honest about my time in Toronto. And I always say this with a grain of salt. Take everything I say about the Toronto Maple Leafs with a grain of salt, because I did not get the job done there. So I never was in a position to add or not. We were always trying to sell. So to me, I'll plead the fifth on that. But I'll also say it doesn't change my view on what they should do. I don't think it's time to sell yet. They got too many good players. They're too good a team most nights. They're getting beat by mental mistakes, in my opinion. They're beating themselves right now. It's uncharacteristic. That's why Sheldon Keefe was so mad the other night. I wish he hadn't gone as hard as he did, but I sympathize with him because I'd had enough to watch in that game. You beat yourself, that's one thing. If you get beat, some nights you get beat. And Jay, you played for me, you know this. Some nights we play well, we get beat. That's the luck of the draw. That's why they play the games. That's why there's a scoreboard in every rink in Canada. Keep score. But sometimes you play well and don't win. Sometimes you beat yourself. They beat themselves.
Totally agree.
The goaltending, the Islanders' goaltender was brilliant. They played well enough to win that game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, losing happens. I think in this market, the frustration is the way they're losing, and totally agree with, not being mentally prepared to start the games, not being able to adjust and hold on to your leads. The way they lose is especially frustrating. How much of that, if you're the GM, would you attribute to the players themselves not doing what they need to do to be professionals, or the coach? Is he not giving them in the mindset? Is he not providing the platform for them to go and have success? Do you think a lot of the shoulder should be on Sheldon Keefe, or is he doing everything he can?
Well, I think there's a blend somewhere in between. As you know, Rosie, there's no easy answers in hockey. I don't think it's the coach. That not knowing that a guy's coming out of the penalty box, that's not the coach's job. You shouldn't have to take a timeout and say, guys, there's 42 seconds left on this penalty. So after we run out about 30 seconds from now, we got to start looking behind us to make sure we cover that back door. That's something that you do in training camp. That's not something you do after the All-Star break. So to me, you can't blame the coach for that. And Morgan Riley on the winning goal just made a mental mistake. It was a bad exchange. He flubbed the transfer up the wall. That happens. I don't think you blame the coach for that. When a coach, one of your key players, makes a mistake, again, a guy who's been playing great for you. So at some point, it's got to rest with the coach. But as far as knowing when a guy comes, Jay, how old were you when you knew a guy coming out of the penalty box was dangerous? Were you 12, 11,
Yeah, I was talking about my U11 team, man. We talk about that at that level, so it's just pretty unacceptable at the NHL level.
They took too long a shift on the power play. So they know if you're doing this, and I don't mind guys taking a longer shift on the power play when you got elite players, but then you've really got to know. You can't flub a lost puck near the top of the blue line and it gets kicked right out to the guy coming out of the box. So you've got to know the fatigue factor. You got to know who's on the ice. You got to know who's there. And you got to be aware of the guy coming out of the box. I fail to see how that is Sheldon Keefe's problem.
Yeah, I don't think it was inaccurate to call it a peewee play either. But I just, the more and more we watch Sheldon Keefe, Berkey, the last couple months, he just seems spent. Like, I mean, you've been through the ringer with different organizations. You've seen head coaches. It just seems like the pressure is ramping up for him, like the last couple months. Would you agree?
Yeah, but I think that's Toronto.
Yeah.
That's Toronto. And Sheldon Keefe's been a winning coach everywhere he's ever gone. And he's continued to coach well here and play well here. I'm not, put it this way, I'm not one of those people who think it's time for coaching change myself. I believe, and I don't know Sheldon that well. I have a good relationship with a lot of coaches. I don't know Sheldon that well. I like what I know of him, and I've tried to get to know him a little bit, but I like him as a coach. I've watched him coach going back to junior, coaching in Pembroke. This guy's a winning coach. But right now, you can sense there's some pressure. That's Toronto. It's not easy there.
Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Rosehill. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.